I dyed my hair blue so my boss would stop blaming me for the hair found in customers' food. I worked at a family restaurant called Mel's Kitchen, where the owner, Tom, was absolutely convinced that every hair found in the food was mine. It didn't matter that we had about 8 other employees with the same brown hair as mine. No, according to Tom, I was the one shedding hair. The first time it happened, a lady found a long brown hair in her pancakes. Tom immediately approached me in front of the entire kitchen and said, "Emma, you need to wear a hairnet or you're fired." I thought, well, whatever, so I started wearing the ridiculous hairnet every shift. But then it happened again. Every time someone complained about hair in their food, Tom would point at me and threaten to dock my pay. I told him over and over that it wasn't me because, well, I was wearing a hairnet. But he would just shake his head and say I was being careless. The other waiters started looking at me strangely, like I was some kind of health code violator. The breaking point came on a busy Saturday morning. A businessman ordered Eggs Benedict and found not one, but 3 brown hairs tangled in his hollandaise sauce. He was furious and threatened to call the health department. Tom burst into the kitchen, his face red and sweaty, and yelled at me in front of everyone. "Emma, that's it. One more hair complaint and you're gone." I was so frustrated I almost cried right there. I knew for certain those hairs weren't mine because I had it pulled back in a tight bun under that stupid hairnet. But Tom didn't realize this. That's when I noticed something that filled me with rage. Sarah, one of the cooks, was standing right behind the grill with her long brown hair completely loose, not even a ponytail in sight. She wasn't wearing any kind of hair protection. But here's the catch. Tom didn't say a word to her because she was his niece. That night, I went to CVS and bought the brightest blue dye I could find. Like an electric blue, the kind that screams, "Look at me," from across the room. I dyed my entire head in my small apartment bathroom, leaving blue stains all over the sink and probably on my security deposit. Monday morning, I arrived at work looking like a punk. Tom looked at me strangely but didn't say anything. I put on my hairnet as always and got to work. Around lunchtime, an elderly couple ordered the special meatloaf. 10 minutes later, they called me over and there it was. A long brown hair on the mashed potatoes. I just watched, and there it was. A long strand of brown hair on the mashed potatoes. I just watched. My heart raced, but not from nervousness. It was pure adrenaline, the kind you feel when you finally have the proof you've been waiting for months. For the first time since I dyed my hair blue, I had concrete, irrefutable evidence that it had never been my hair in the food. I looked at the elderly couple waiting for a solution. The lady had a disgusted look, pushing the plate aside. The husband shook his head, clearly disappointed. Normally, I would call Tom discreetly. He would come to the table, humiliate me in front of the customers, and I would swallow it once again. But today would be different. I felt my hands trembling, not from fear, but from anticipation. I took the plate carefully, as if it were precious criminal evidence, because that's exactly what it represented, proof of my innocence and the systematic hypocrisy I had been suffering. I walked slowly toward the counter, where Tom was reviewing some orders. I realized the other employees noticed something different in my posture. Maria, the oldest waitress, looked at me with curiosity. Carlos, the cook, looked up from the grill. And Sarah? Sarah was there, working on the griddle with her brown hair swaying freely, without any concern for hygiene. She didn't even notice what was about to happen. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Months of public humiliation, months of being treated like a problematic employee, months of having my competence questioned for something I had never done. All of that was about to end. I stopped right in the center of the dining room, where all the customers could see and hear me. The restaurant was full for Monday lunch. Perfect. More witnesses. Better. "Tom!" I shouted, with a calm voice but loud enough for half the customers to hear. "I need you to come here and solve one more of my hair problems in the food." He approached with that arrogant confidence as always, already preparing the usual speech. I could see in his eyes that he was ready for one more public humiliation of irresponsible Emma. "Let me guess," he said loudly so customers could hear. "You forgot to tie your hair properly again?" That's when I made the move that would change everything. Dramatically, with very slow and deliberate gestures, I removed my cap. My electric blue hair fell over my shoulders like a cascade of rebellion. The silence that followed was deafening. Tom literally stood there with his mouth open. Some customers dropped their forks. Even the background music seemed to stop. I pointed to the brown strand on the plate, maintaining eye contact with Tom. "Explain to me how my brown hair is in this food." Tom. His face went from red to white in seconds. He opened and closed his mouth several times, like a fish out of water. Customers began murmuring among themselves, some taking out their phones to film the unfolding drama. "I'm waiting," I continued, keeping my voice calm but firm. How is it that my blue hair turned brown on this plate? That's when Sarah finally realized what was happening. She looked at me, then at Tom, then at her own loose hair, and in a desperate attempt to go unnoticed, began looking for a cap. But it was too late. "Are you all seeing this?" I announced to the entire restaurant, turning to show my blue hair to all the customers. "For months I've been blamed for something I never did. Now you're all witnesses to the truth." Tom was still stuttering, trying to find an explanation. "Well, maybe it's from before, when I still what?" "Tom," I interrupted. "When my hair was still brown? That was 3 weeks ago. Are you telling me that a strand of hair was wandering around the kitchen for 3 weeks until it landed on this couple's plate?" The customers' murmurs grew louder. Some people laughed. Others expressed indignation. I was winning the audience. I took out my phone and started recording everything. "People, you won't believe what I'm about to show you." I started a live stream on Instagram. "My name is Emma, and for months I was publicly humiliated by my boss, who blamed me for all the hair found in customers' food. I showed my blue hair to the camera, then the brown strand on the plate, and then Tom, still completely lost. This is Tom, my boss, who still hasn't been able to explain to me how my blue hair turned brown on this plate." Views began to increase rapidly. Supportive comments started appearing. "Go, Emma! Expose that abusive boss! Justice for the blue-haired girl!" Customers began getting up and leaving without paying. Some expressed disgust at the sanitary conditions. One woman said loudly, "If they don't even know where the hair in the food comes from, imagine what else could be wrong here." "And this," I continued, turning the camera toward Sarah, who was trying to hide behind the griddle, "is Sarah, Tom's niece, who has been working without a cap for months while I was humiliated daily." The video already had hundreds of views, and comments kept coming. Hashtags began appearing. "Dr. Blue Hair Justice," "Dr. Justice for Emma," "Dr. Trash, Toxic Restaurant." Tom finally tried to take control of the situation. "Emma, stop this now or you're fired." I laughed. I literally laughed in his face. "Fire me? Tom, you just lost half your customers. Look around." And it was true. The restaurant was emptying. People were paying their bills quickly and leaving. Some didn't even bother to pay. "Besides," I continued, still recording, "do you really want to fire me in front of thousands of people watching live? Because that would be an excellent way to make this situation even worse for you." Maria, the oldest waitress, approached me. "Emma, can I say something?" She looked at the camera. "I've worked here for 5 years, and I always knew those hairs weren't Emma's." But Tom never wanted to listen. Carlos, the cook, also joined us. "It's true. Tom forbade me from complaining about Sarah's practices. He said if I continued bothering her, I would be fired." The revolt was spreading. Other employees began approaching, each with their own stories of abuse and favoritism. What started as my personal revenge was transforming into a complete exposure of the restaurant's abusive practices. Tom realized he was losing control. "You're all fired," he shouted. "All of you." "Perfect," I replied. "Because then you can explain to your remaining customers, if there are any left, how the restaurant is going to function without employees." The video continued gaining traction. Local influencers started sharing. Food critics in the city expressed horror in the comments. Local media began sending messages asking for interviews. In less than an hour, I had gone from humiliated employee to local celebrity. And Tom? Tom was discovering that his actions had consequences. Consequences he never imagined could come from someone he considered insignificant. But that was just the beginning. What I didn't know was that a local investigative journalist was among the viewers of the live stream, and she was very interested in learning more about the labor practices at Mel's Kitchen. 2 hours later, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Support messages were coming in by the thousands. People were sharing their own stories of abusive bosses. The video had gone viral, not just locally, but nationally. Rebecca Martinez from KQED News was the first journalist to call me. "Emma, I saw your live stream. I'd like to do a deeper report on what you experienced at the restaurant. Can I come see you?" I accepted immediately. It was no longer just about me. It was about all the employees who suffer silent abuse every day. We met at a cafe near my house. Rebecca had that serious investigative journalist air, but also a genuine kindness that made me feel comfortable telling everything. "Tell me about the pattern of behavior," she said, recording our conversation. "Was it always like this with other employees?" "Always," I replied. But with me it was worse because I questioned. Tom hated when I tried to defend myself. There were days when he would humiliate me in front of customers just to show who was in charge. I showed her months of documentation I had saved, text messages where Tom threatened to dock my pay, photos of when I came home crying after an especially difficult day, even some audio recordings I had discreetly made during the humiliations. "Did you know this could bring legal trouble for him?" Rebecca asked, flipping through my notes. I suspected, but I didn't know what to do. I need the job, you know? Or needed. Now I don't even know if I still have work. Rebecca laughed. From what I saw in the video, I think that's the least of your worries now. She told me she had already interviewed 3 former restaurant employees who confirmed the pattern of abuse. They all had similar stories: favoritism for Sarah, public humiliation for anyone who questioned, and constant threats of firing. "There's more," she said. "I received an anonymous tip that the restaurant has serious problems with health surveillance. Apparently, it's not just the hair issue." My stomach turned. "What kind of problems?" "Improper food temperatures, falsified cleaning records, safety equipment in terrible condition. The person who contacted me says Tom instructed employees to lie during inspections." That made me remember several strange situations I had witnessed. Times when Tom hastily cleaned the kitchen area when someone from outside arrived. Times when he asked me to store certain things in the freezer, just for today. "I can give you more details about that," I said. I documented some things that seemed strange, but at the time I didn't know they were so serious. Rebecca smiled. "Emma, you may not realize it, but you built a solid case against your former boss. This goes far beyond a viral video." The next day, the report aired. It was a 15-minute investigation into abusive practices in family restaurants, using Mel's Kitchen as a case study. Testimonies from former employees, analysis by labor law specialists, and even an interview with a health surveillance inspector explaining the risks of the practices I had documented. Tom tried to do damage control, giving a disastrous interview where he called everything a misunderstanding and said I was a problematic employee who distorted the situation. But the evidence was overwhelming. The most incredible thing was the public reaction. People began canceling reservations, suppliers canceled contracts, and even the mall where the restaurant was located issued a statement saying they were evaluating the situation. Sarah also tried to defend herself on social media, posting a video where she cried and said she never wanted to harm anyone. But the comments were devastating. People weren't interested in apologies. They wanted accountability. That's when I received the call that would change everything. Dr. Patricia Vance, a lawyer specializing in labor law, had seen the report and wanted to talk to me. "Emma, you have a very strong case for moral harassment, discrimination, and creating a hostile work environment," she said during our consultation. "With the evidence you have, especially the recordings and colleague testimonies, this could be an exemplary case." "Exemplary how?" I asked. "The kind that changes legislation. The kind that makes other employers think twice before treating employees like Tom treated you." That same week, we filed the lawsuit. The repercussion was immediate. Labor rights organizations got in touch offering support. Universities wanted to study the case. Even politicians began using my story in speeches about labor law reform. Tom, desperate, tried to call me several times. He left messages on my phone begging to resolve this without lawyers. But I wasn't interested in negotiations. The pressure on him increased when health surveillance conducted a surprise inspection. They found exactly what Rebecca had reported: multiple violations, falsified records, and Sarah working without protective equipment. The restaurant was temporarily closed and the fines were heavy. Tom couldn't explain to inspectors why only I was required to wear protective equipment while other employees, especially Sarah, had different rules. Mel's Kitchen became synonymous with poor management and labor abuse. Memes were created. Business administration students used the case as an example of what not to do. The restaurant that was once a neighborhood landmark was now a symbol of everything wrong with employee treatment in small businesses. But for me, the greatest satisfaction came when I received a message from a young woman in another city. "Emma, I saw your story and decided to report my boss who does similar things. Thank you for giving me courage." That's what it was all about from the beginning. It wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity. It was about showing that people like Tom can't continue abusing employees just because they think they can. 6 months later, I was in court. The atmosphere was solemn. Different from the chaos of that day at the restaurant, Tom was sitting at the defense table, visibly dejected. He was no longer the arrogant man who publicly humiliated me. Dr. Patricia presented our case meticulously. The viral recordings, colleague testimonies, media coverage, everything formed a clear picture of systematic abuse. "Your Honor," she said, "this is not just a case of workplace conflict. It's about how a toxic work environment can devastate a person's life and how small businesses can abuse vulnerable employees. Tom's defense tried to argue that they were misunderstandings and that my reaction was disproportionate. But when my lawyer presented the evidence, months of documentation, testimonies from multiple employees, and even the health surveillance report, it became clear there was no way to deny the pattern of abuse. The judge was direct. Mr. Tom, your actions constitute systematic moral harassment. The intentional creation of a hostile work environment for a specific employee is unacceptable in any business context. I won the case. The compensation was substantial, enough to compensate not only material damages, but especially moral damages. The judge specifically cited the case as an example of how apparently small behaviors can have devastating impacts on employees' lives. Tom was forced to sell his house to pay the compensation and health surveillance fines. The restaurant never reopened. Sarah got a job elsewhere, but her reputation was also tarnished by association with the case. But the legal victory was only part of the story. What really mattered was what I did with it. I used part of the compensation to realize a dream I didn't even know I had: opening my own business. Blue Hair Snacks started as a simple food truck, but became an instant success. It wasn't just because I had become famous, though that helped. It was because I really cared about every detail. Every employee was treated with respect. Every customer received not just good food, but also an environment where they felt welcome. I hired Maria, Carlos, and other former Mel's Kitchen employees. We created a work environment where no one was afraid to give opinions, where everyone wore the same protective equipment, where favoritism didn't exist. I never thought working could be like this, Maria told me one day, as we cleaned the food truck at the end of the shift. Without fear, without constant tension, the food truck became more than a business. It became a symbol. People came not just for the food, but for what we represented. Employees from other restaurants would stop by to tell their own stories of abuse and ask for advice. I began giving lectures on labor rights at culinary and business schools. I always started by telling my story, showing how an apparently simple situation, hair and food, can hide years of systematic abuse. Dignity at work is not a luxury, I would tell audiences. It's a basic right. And when that right is violated, we have to have the courage to defend ourselves. Universities began using my case as a study, not just about labor rights, but about how social media can be used to expose injustices and create real change. 1 year after the legal victory, I received an email that made me cry. It was from a young woman named Lisa, who worked at a restaurant in another state. Emma, my boss, did similar things to me. He blamed me for problems that weren't mine, humiliated me in front of customers. After seeing your story, I recorded some situations and also sued him. I won. I wanted to thank you for giving me courage not to accept that treatment. Attached to the email was a photo. Lisa was smiling in front of her own food truck, with a large sticker on the side that said, "Inspired by Blue Hair Emma." That was the real victory. It wasn't the compensation money or momentary fame. It was knowing that my story had inspired other people not to accept abusive treatment. I went back to where Mel's Kitchen used to be a few times. Now it was a successful clothing store. The new owner, a lovely woman named Janet, put a small plaque in the place. Here, the Blue Hair Revolution was born. Emma, thank you for teaching us about dignity at work. Tom, I heard by chance that he was working as a waiter in a neighboring city. Someone said he had changed, that he treated colleagues with respect. Part of me was happy about that. I never wanted to destroy his life. I just wanted him to understand that his actions had consequences. Sarah also learned some lessons. She looked for me one day, almost 2 years after everything had happened. She came to the food truck and asked to talk. "Emma, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness after so long," she said, with tears in her eyes. "But I needed to tell you that it was all my fault. I knew those hairs were mine, but I let them blame you because it was easier. I could have been cruel. I could have said things that would hurt her. But I realized that holding on to anger wouldn't get me anywhere. Sarah, what matters is that you learned, and that this never happens to anyone again." She nodded and walked away. I never saw her again, but I learned she became an advocate for workers' rights at the company where she worked. 5 years later, Blue Hair Snacks had become a small chain of food trucks. I still dyed my hair blue. It had become my trademark. But it had also become a symbol of resistance and dignity. I received an award from the local Chamber of Commerce for social entrepreneurship. In the speech, I talked about how a situation of abuse had transformed into an opportunity for growth. Sometimes the worst experiences prepare us for the best opportunities, I told the audience. Don't let anyone diminish you. Don't accept abusive treatment. And remember, sometimes all we need is courage to show who we really are. I ended the speech by removing a hair tie and letting my blue strands fall over my shoulders. The audience exploded in applause. After the ceremony, a young woman approached. She had pink hair and determined eyes. "Emma, my name is Ashley. I work at a company where my boss treats me badly. After hearing your story, I decided I'm not going to accept this anymore." I smiled and gave her my card. "Anything you need, call me. No one deserves to be treated like I was treated." She squeezed my hand and said, "Thank you for teaching us we can be stronger than we think." I went home that night thinking about how life can be surprising. 6 years ago, I was a scared employee who accepted humiliation because I needed the job. Today, I was a respected businesswoman who used her platform to defend others. It all started with a simple decision: dyeing my hair blue. But in reality, it was much more than that. It was deciding I deserved to be treated with dignity. It was choosing to fight for myself when no one else would. And if I could go back in time and talk to that scared Emma in the apartment bathroom, mixing blue dye, I would tell her, "Do it. Dye that hair."
I found a box of birth control pills in my widowed mother-in-law's room. I replaced the pills with ordinary stomach medicine. Before starting the story, I want to inform you that this account was taken from Reddit from another country, so some words or phrases might not make sense due to translation. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and enjoy the story. The reason was, since my mother-in-law had always wanted a grandchild, why not have one herself? Later, Mrs. Thompson from the house next door confronted my mother-in-law by throwing her a bank card and telling her that it was the payment for giving a child to our family. I installed a small camera in the bedroom. After coming home from work, I often noticed that the bed, which used to be perfectly made, was rumpled and the alarm clock or the glass on the nightstand had been subtly moved. But it was just me, my husband Ryan, and my mother-in-law, who had recently moved in. 2 years ago, after my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law had been living alone. Ryan and I had agreed to live alone before marriage, but 2 months into our newlywed life, he used a touching story to bring his mother to live with us. He solemnly swore that my mom is just a little woman. She won't affect our life together at all. Unexpectedly, on the second day after my mother-in-law moved in, she started knocking on the door at 6 a.m. "Olivia, why haven't you prepared breakfast for Mom yet?" When there was no response to her call, she started knocking harder, calling us. I got up with difficulty and opened the door. "Mom, we don't have a housekeeper to make breakfast." "It's too expensive," I exclaimed. "Making breakfast is not a big deal. Why waste that money?" She barely reached my nose, but her attitude was imposing as she stared at me. Ryan kept sleeping like a log. Considering that he had worked late the night before, I didn't wake him. Instead, I resigned myself to go to the kitchen to heat up some bread and then fry eggs and ham to make sandwiches. My mother-in-law pushed aside the sandwich. "Is this breakfast? Are you kidding me? This is what Ryan and I normally eat for breakfast. What do you want to eat?" "I'm not asking for much. There should be oatmeal in the morning, preferably not repeated within a week. The side dishes can be anything, but there must be bacon and sausages, right? Protein is nutritious but should not be too greasy. Just like breakfast at the Rosewood. Coffee would be fine." Her saliva flew over my face as she continued talking. I wiped my face and took the keys to go buy breakfast for her. She kept talking. "I'm not asking you to buy it. I want you to make it. What's bought is unhealthy. Who knows what ingredients they use? Hey, how dare you leave while I'm talking?" In the following days, she became increasingly domineering. After dragging out the housekeeper who worked for hours, all the domestic burden fell on me. She insisted that clothes could not be put in the washing machine. She said they had to be washed by hand to be clean. She unplugged the dishwasher, saying it wasted electricity and water. She would come into our bedroom in the middle of the night to turn off the air conditioner, arguing that she feared we would catch a cold. I had accumulated a lot of resentment. When I saw the surveillance video, I finally exploded. 2 days had passed since I installed the camera. That day, I had just finished a project proposal and sat at my desk to review the footage at triple speed. Unexpectedly, I saw Mr. Thompson hugging and kissing my mother-in-law as they entered my bedroom, then the two of them rolling around in my bed. Mr. Thompson lived next door and had an apparently perfect family. Who could imagine he was having an affair with my mother-in-law? Seeing the tangled figures in the video, I felt a wave of nausea and ran to the bathroom, completely vomiting my lunch. The two moved with practiced ease. They were clearly habitual offenders. I steadied myself and prepared to tell Ryan everything that night, and then confront his mother about it together. After dinner, I played with a USB drive in my hand that contained a copy of the video. I was trying to find a way to bring it up, Ryan came out of the bathroom freshly showered, with only a towel around his body and steam coming off him. He hugged me, rubbing his beard against my face. He took the USB drive. "What's this?" I took a deep breath. "Why don't you watch it?" Curious, he connected it to the computer, but just as he was about to click on the file, I stopped him. I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen, more intense than anything I had experienced before. My calves began to tremble slightly. I fell to my knees, curling up and holding my stomach. He panicked and came to support me, massaging my abdomen. "No, hospital," I managed to say. He quickly dressed, lifted me up, and ran to the hospital. At the hospital, they drew blood and ran tests. I had already used all my strength, and my forehead was covered in cold sweat. It wasn't long before I even developed a high fever. The test results showed acute liver damage, cause unknown. The doctor told us it could be due to improper and uncontrolled use of medication. Ryan and I looked at each other confused. I hadn't taken any medication recently, and my diet had been quite normal. The only difference was a soup that my mother-in-law had offered to cook voluntarily that night, saying it was to nourish my body, especially for me. Under Ryan's questioning, my mother-in-law finally admitted that the soup was actually a medicinal concoction she had obtained from a so-called master. "What kind of medicine?" Ryan asked. "A fertility soup," she replied. I was exhausted both physically and mentally. I had always been weak since childhood, and doctors had advised against pregnancy. Besides, I had personally decided not to have children and had discussed it thoroughly with Ryan before marriage. He had firmly said he supported my decision. To compensate, my family had bought our marital home so we could live as a couple. I had said nothing when his mother moved in, and she had tried to make me take various strange medicines several times, which I had always refused for various reasons. I had complained to Ryan about this, but he said that older people are like that and asked me not to take it into account. Now she had done something like this. If the situation had been more serious, I could have accused her of attempted murder. I stayed in the hospital to recover for quite a while, and this incident was hastily resolved. Ryan severely warned his mother not to give me any more unknown substances, to which she reluctantly agreed. The day I was discharged, Ryan came to pick me up. He wanted to handle the paperwork. In the hospital corridor, I unexpectedly heard his mother's voice. "Ryan, I've asked the doctors. They say Olivia's body probably can't handle having children." Ryan already knew this, so he dismissed it with a few words. Then I heard his mother lower her voice. "I found a good girl for you." "Ow. What are you saying, Mom?" Ryan asked. "I promise I won't give Olivia any more medicine, but you have to let me have a grandchild. That girl has wide hips, a strong body. She'll surely give you a big, healthy baby. She really likes you. If you have a child with her and Olivia accepts it, it would be best. If she doesn't accept it, you can divorce her." I felt like I was going to get sick again. My head spun with rage and shock. Not only was my mother-in-law having an affair with Mr. Thompson, but she was also encouraging another girl to be her son's mistress. She was truly rotten to the core. I barely managed to stay upright, leaning against the wall just to hear Ryan's response. "I can't divorce Olivia," he said. Hearing this, I felt slightly relieved, but his next words were, "I need to get more money from her family first. When she's no longer useful to me, I'll divorce her." "Mom, let me see that girl's picture." I knew something was wrong long before I discovered the truth. Ryan had been distant, and although he tried to hide it, I noticed the change in his behavior. I felt like I was losing the connection we once had, and my instincts told me that something else was going on. So I made a difficult decision. I needed to investigate. The first clue came when I found strange messages on Ryan's phone. They weren't just banal texts, but conversations that suggested something more. When I saw that he was constantly exchanging messages with a woman I didn't know, my heart sank. I knew I needed to confirm my suspicions, so I started to observe more closely. I went beyond the messages and began monitoring his emails and even his calls. The evidence piled up, and eventually, I found the confirmation I dreaded. Ryan was in a secret relationship with another woman, a woman who, according to the messages, was being used to fulfill his mother's desire for a grandchild. I was devastated, but also determined. I couldn't allow Ryan and his mother to go unpunished. I began to carefully plan my revenge. First, I gathered all the evidence I could. I printed the messages, saved photos, and made copies of all the documents proving the betrayal. Next, I consulted a lawyer to understand my legal options. I decided that, by exposing the betrayal, I would also file for divorce, as the relationship was irreparably damaged. The next step was to learn more about Ryan's mother's involvement. I knew she had played a crucial role in all this and needed to ensure she also faced consequences. I interacted more with her, trying to gather more information about her actions. The revelation of Ryan's infidelity was just the tip of the iceberg. The situation took an unexpected turn when, while investigating the betrayal, I discovered that my mother-in-law was pregnant. At first, I couldn't believe it. My heart was broken, and I didn't want to accept that something so absurd could be happening. However, there were evident signs, and despite her nervousness, my mother-in-law seemed to be hiding something. I knew I needed to act with caution. My strategy was to stay calm and do whatever was necessary to confirm the pregnancy. Since my mother-in-law was reluctant to take a pregnancy test due to nervousness and embarrassment, I decided to take a more subtle approach. I began talking to her about the symptoms I had noticed, trying to gently raise her awareness. Eventually, she started to open up a bit more, and after much insistence, I managed to convince her to take a test. But, to avoid raising suspicion, I suggested she collect a urine sample and put it in a container I had for a routine health checkup. She didn't know that the goal was to test for pregnancy without her realizing it. When she went to the bathroom, I made sure to be close by to ensure everything went smoothly. After she left, I took the sample and conducted the pregnancy test. The result was clear. She was indeed pregnant. This was the final detail I needed to complete my revenge plan. The dinner night arrived, and it was time to reveal the whole truth. I invited Ryan and his mother to the house, planning a final confrontation. Additionally, I called my family and his family, who, although they didn't like Ryan and my mother-in-law very much, came to the dinner because I had promised a big revelation, and everyone thought I was pregnant and going to make an announcement. The dinner was elegantly decorated, but the tension was palpable. While everyone settled in, I prepared a presentation. I began speaking about the importance of transparency and honesty before revealing the evidence I had gathered. I showed the messages and photos of Ryan's secret relationship with the other woman. Then, calmly, I moved on to the most shocking part, the pregnancy test of my mother-in-law. First, I showed the test, and everyone was very surprised, as I would be pregnant by the man who betrayed me. My mother-in-law didn't even care about the betrayal and started celebrating. But soon after, I presented the container and the test, revealing that the test was actually hers, meaning she was pregnant by Mr. Thompson. The room fell into absolute silence as I displayed the evidence. Ryan appeared to be in shock. His expression changed from anger to despair as he saw the proof. He tried to justify his actions, but there were no excuses that could erase what had happened. His mother was also devastated, her dignity completely shattered. My mother-in-law started crying desperately and couldn't believe it all. I said, "If you wanted a child so badly, now you have one, but I feel sorry for her." Ryan, in a moment of indignation, demanded that, for the divorce, I sell the house and give him half of the money. His tone was challenging, as if it were his last attempt to control the situation. However, I was prepared for this moment. Before the dinner, I had taken steps to transfer the house to my family's name. So, when Ryan made his demand, I was able to respond firmly. "The house is no longer yours. It is registered in my family's name. Therefore, you have no claim to it." Ryan's expression quickly shifted from anger to disbelief. He tried to argue, but I had already made my decision and ensured that my legal protection was in order. The divorce would be finalized with minimal financial complications for me, and Ryan found himself with no recourse to claim what he no longer had a right to. The dinner ended abruptly. Ryan and his mother left, leaving me alone with my family to deal with the sense of closure. The feeling of relief and justice prevailed, even though the path had been painful. The truth was exposed, and I could finally begin to rebuild my life free from the lies and betrayals that had corrupted it. The following days were dedicated to healing and recovery. I received support from friends and family, and over time, I was able to find a new perspective for the future. The betrayal and revenge were painful, but they allowed me to reaffirm my worth and ensure that I would move forward with dignity. Since a lot of time has passed, everything has changed. After a few years, I met a wonderful man who respects me deeply. We've been married for 2 years now, and I had discussed what happened and my views on pregnancy with him, as I had been unable to conceive until then. He fully accepted and respected my decision, and we have been living happily ever since. I believe that everything in life has a purpose, and I wanted to share this miracle with you. That's right, my period has been late for 2 months, and I took a test last week, and I'm pregnant, but now with a man I know will respect me. We're happy and finally going to have a healthy and happy family. My ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband don't know about this and won't, at least not from me. But when things are meant to happen, they do, and I'm happy because my current husband gives me the security of a happy family, and that's what matters. That's why I wanted to share this story with you. Don't force yourself into anything. Don't cling to toxic men. I thought my life was going to end back then, but now I have a whole life ahead with my new family. Thank you for reading this story. The first clue came when I found strange messages on Ryan's phone. They weren't just banal texts, but conversations that suggested something more. When I saw that he was constantly exchanging messages with a woman I didn't know, my heart sank. I knew I needed to confirm my suspicions, so I started to observe more closely. I went beyond the messages and began monitoring his emails and even his calls. The evidence piled up, and eventually, I found the confirmation I dreaded. Ryan was in a secret relationship with another woman, a woman who, according to the messages, was being used to fulfill his mother's desire for a grandchild. I was devastated but also determined. I couldn't allow Ryan and his mother to go unpunished. I began to carefully plan my revenge. First, I gathered all the evidence I could. I printed the messages, saved photos, and made copies of all the documents proving the betrayal. Next, I consulted a lawyer to understand my legal options. I decided that, by exposing the betrayal, I would also file for divorce, as the relationship was irreparably damaged. The next step was to learn more about Ryan's mother's involvement. I knew she had played a crucial role in all this and needed to ensure she also faced consequences. I interacted more with her, trying to gather more information about her actions. The revelation of Ryan's infidelity was just the tip of the iceberg. The situation took an unexpected turn when, while investigating the betrayal, I discovered that my mother-in-law was pregnant. At first, I couldn't believe it. My heart was broken, and I didn't want to accept that something so absurd could be happening. However, there were evident signs, and despite her nervousness, my mother-in-law seemed to be hiding something. I knew I needed to act with caution. My strategy was to stay calm and do whatever was necessary to confirm the pregnancy. Since my mother-in-law was reluctant to take a pregnancy test due to nervousness and embarrassment, I decided to take a more subtle approach. I began talking to her about the symptoms I had noticed, trying to gently raise her awareness. Eventually, she started to open up a bit more, and after much insistence, I managed to convince her to take a test. But, to avoid raising suspicion, I suggested she collect a urine sample and put it in a container I had for a routine health checkup. She didn't know that the goal was to test for pregnancy without her realizing it. When she went to the bathroom, I made sure to be close by to ensure everything went smoothly. After she left, I took the sample and conducted the pregnancy test. The result was clear. She was indeed pregnant. This was the final detail I needed to complete my revenge plan. The dinner night arrived, and it was time to reveal the whole truth. I invited Ryan and his mother to the house, planning a final confrontation. Additionally, I called my family and his family, who, although they didn't like Ryan and my mother-in-law very much, came to the dinner because I had promised a big revelation, and everyone thought I was pregnant and going to make an announcement. The dinner was elegantly decorated, but the tension was palpable. While everyone settled in, I prepared a presentation. I began speaking about the importance of transparency and honesty before revealing the evidence I had gathered. I showed the messages and photos of Ryan's secret relationship with the other woman. Then, calmly, I moved on to the most shocking part, the pregnancy test of my mother-in-law. First, I showed the test, and everyone was very surprised, as I would be pregnant by the man who betrayed me. My mother-in-law didn't even care about the betrayal and started celebrating. But soon after, I presented the container and the test, revealing that the test was actually hers, meaning she was pregnant by Mr. Thompson. The room fell into absolute silence as I displayed the evidence. Ryan appeared to be in shock. His expression changed from anger to despair as he saw the proof. He tried to justify his actions, but there were no excuses that could erase what had happened. His mother was also devastated, her dignity completely shattered. My mother-in-law started crying desperately and couldn't believe it all. I said, "If you wanted a child so badly, now you have one, but I feel sorry for her." Ryan, in a moment of indignation, demanded that for the divorce, I sell the house and give him half of the money. His tone was challenging, as if it were his last attempt to control the situation. However, I was prepared for this moment. Before the dinner, I had taken steps to transfer the house to my family's name. So, when Ryan made his demand, I was able to respond firmly. The house is no longer yours. It is registered in my family's name. Therefore, you have no claim to it. Ryan's expression quickly shifted from anger to disbelief. He tried to argue, but I had already made my decision and ensured that my legal protection was in order. The divorce would be finalized with minimal financial complications for me, and Ryan found himself with no recourse to claim what he no longer had a right to. The dinner ended abruptly. Ryan and his mother left, leaving me alone with my family to deal with a sense of closure. The feeling of relief and justice prevailed, even though the path had been painful. The truth was exposed, and I could finally begin to rebuild my life free from the lies and betrayals that had corrupted it. I got brutally beaten by my son's fiancée because she thought I was his mistress. This story will surprise you. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. My son Troy Malone posted a set of photos of us having dinner together on Facebook, and the caption read, "You have been by my side all the way. Thank you. The most important woman in my life." Unexpectedly, my son's fiancée Sienna Hunt mistook me for Troy's mistress. On the day of the engagement banquet, Sienna led a group of her friends and blocked me at a beauty salon. You shameless woman. How dare you seduce Troy? I will make sure you're unable to seduce a man for the rest of your life. Girls, sew her part down there up. If anything happens, I'll take the blame. Sienna violently beat me up at the beauty salon before taking me to the engagement banquet. Today, I will let you see who Troy really likes, Sienna said as she stepped on my face with one foot, humiliating me. All the guests around burst into laughter, just as Sienna was enjoying her triumph and beating me up. Troy finally arrived. I watched Troy feeling like I was on the verge of dying. The engagement banquet seemed like it might end now. Troy was about to get engaged to his girlfriend, whom he had been dating for 2 years. Hearing this, I was overjoyed and thought that the Malone family would soon have a successor. Then I canceled all my work in Orco and bought the earliest flight ticket. I rushed back to Latin Art. Overnight, I reunited with Troy at a restaurant. Then he posted a photo of our reunion on Facebook with a caption that read, "Thank you, the most important woman in my life." Since Troy's father passed away, all the business responsibilities had fallen on my shoulders. I had no choice but to fly to Orco. It had been many years since I last saw Troy. Upon learning the news that Troy was about to get engaged, I prepared myself seriously. I planned to face my in-laws with my most stunning look so as not to embarrass Troy. That night, Troy and Sienna had a big fight. I asked Troy what had happened. After all, tomorrow was their engagement banquet. Troy angrily told me Sienna said she wants to beat up my mistress. She is so unreasonable. How could I, Troy Malone, have a mistress? I rarely interfered or inquired about Troy's matters or relationships, but I advised him, getting married is a matter between two people. You must be loyal before getting married. If I find out that you dare to bully Sienna in the future, I will teach you a lesson. I don't care if you indeed have another woman in secret, since you chose Sienna cut off all ties with other women. Troy was sweating profusely for my scolding. I didn't expect that the night before their engagement banquet, Troy and Sienna would have a big fight because of a mistress I had secretly made up in my mind. I decided that I would personally explain the misunderstanding between Troy and Sienna. At the engagement banquet tomorrow, I bought a villa worth $17 million as a meeting gift for Sienna, her mother-in-law. The day before the engagement banquet, I carefully dressed myself and went to a beauty salon to get light makeup. I intended to show up looking my best before attending the banquet. Tonight, just when everything was ready and I was about to attend Troy's engagement banquet, I saw Sienna leading a group of girls rushing into the beauty salon. Angrily, I thought to myself, what a small world. I was about to get up and greet Sienna and meet her in advance. However, looking at me fiercely, Sienna walked towards me with her girlfriends. Everyone in the salon was surprised and stared at us. Sienna slapped me in the face, ruining my carefully applied makeup. The burning pain on my face made me feel dizzy. The situation was chaotic. Sienna grabbed my hair and cursed at me loudly. "You are such a bee. Do you think I can't find you hiding here without Troy being honest with me?" Her sudden slap and the overwhelming insults made me feel both pain and embarrassment. All the guests in the beauty salon were eagerly watching as if this were some drama where a legitimate fiancé beat up a mistress. She seems quite well-mannered with her words and actions. Some whispered unexpectedly. At this age, she would seduce other men and do such shameless things. Everything can indeed happen in this vast world. Everyone's whispers echoed in my ears. I endured the pain on my face. And Sienna, you misunderstood. I am Troy's. Sienna didn't give me a chance to speak doubt. She grabbed my hair and pushed me down to the ground. Several of her friends swarmed around, punching and kicking me. The intense pain almost numbed my whole body. Sienna scolded me while beating me. You slept. You seduced my husband, and you deny that you're not a mistress? If you're not his mistress, how do you know my name? It's funny. I didn't expect you to hide so well. Let me tell you, A lowly woman like you will never be able to rise high and gain glory. Don't ever think about snatching my husband from me your whole life. When I marry into a wealthy family, I will sell you to a brothel, let you serve thousands of men and be taken advantage of by tens of thousands. Amid such offensive insults, I kept Sienna. I am not Troy's mistress. If you don't believe me, call Troy and ask him. Before, Troy had shown me photos and videos of him and Sienna together. In the photos, Sienna appeared as a gentle, considerate, and well-educated girl. But now I realized that I was wrong. I didn't expect Sienna to be so sarcastic and mean. She wouldn't give me any chance to explain. She pulled my hair apart and crazily dragged me around, suffering from excruciating pain. I screamed over and over again, "Well, Troy, you're calling him so intimately. A cheap whore is always a cheap whore. Now you're still verbally stubborn." Sienna looked gloomy, saying, "What a stubborn woman. You sluts who serve as mistresses for others will never admit that you are mistresses, even in death. Later, I will take you to the engagement banquet and personally ask Troy whether you or I serve him better. With me around, you will never be able to marry into a wealthy family in your whole life. At best, you are just second-hand goods that Troy will kick away after getting tired of you." Sienna's sharp curses kept stimulating my nerves. I dared not imagine what would happen if Troy married a woman like Sienna in the future. Before this, I was full of expectations. I even bought a post-marriage villa for them. Let's kill this slut. Take off her clothes today. I want to see if this trash has any shame." Sienna's best friend's eyes flickered with fierceness. They stared at me intently. 4 or 5 people were crazily pulling my hair and beating me on the ground, cooperating with another woman. Sienna was tearing off the buttons on my long dress. For a moment, I was covered in blood and my body was exposed. Everyone looked at me gloatingly, as if it no longer mattered to them whether I was a mistress or not. The scene of me being humiliated and beaten became a great show in their eyes. They watched with excitement. I desperately covered my chest. There were so many of them. I was simply no match for them. The intense pain almost made me faint. In a daze, I even saw Sienna taking out her cell phone and starting to take pictures of me. "You slept. Your reputation is to be ruined."
Sienna's
Several close friends were about to tear off my remaining tattered clothes. I shouted out, "Sienna, I am Troy's mother." Sienna was stunned. I got brutally beaten by my son's fiancée because she thought I was his mistress. I thought she would call Troy and personally verify my identity. But she laughed recklessly, saying, "You vixen. Do you deserve to be Troy's mother and my mother-in-law? You are just a mistress who can only serve others for a lifetime and live in darkness. You are nobody but a good-looking slut. Troy will never like you. If you were Troy's mother, then the whole world would be turned upside down." Sienna sneered, her face showing madness. Taking out her cell phone, she constantly took pictures of me. What made me desperate was that there were many employees and customers in this beauty salon, but no one stopped them. Everyone was holding their cell phones and taking random pictures of me. Did you see it? This is the end for someone who becomes a mistress for others. The legitimate wife caught her in a beauty salon. The mistress deserves to die. Take off all her clothes and let her be disgraced. She can never turn her life around. The guests added fuel to the fire. Everything around me was in chaos. I felt like my face was covered in blood. I was going to be beaten to death by them. In the chaos, I seemed to hear Sienna's best friend, who was uncertain about the situation, asking quietly, "Sienna, should we confirm it? What if she is?" Before she could finish speaking, Sienna waved her hand to interrupt her. Looking at me lying in a pool of blood with disheveled hair, she said with a sneer, "My mother-in-law is still in Orco. She said she would only arrive today." I did tell Troy that I would attend their engagement banquet on that exact day. By the way, I would formally meet Sienna. I was very happy. I would surely attend Troy's wedding regardless of what happened. So I arrived early last night. I had a meal with Troy at a restaurant near the airport. Now, I knew that Sienna was referring to the photo Troy posted on Facebook last night. I was the mistress that Sienna wanted to beat up. Amid the tearing and fighting, Sienna tore my long dress down to my waist. Her friend restrained both of my arms, and Sienna tore off my remaining underwear. There was a burst of commotion around us. Well, you have the guts to be a mistress, but you don't dare let others see your private parts. Indeed, you have got something. I didn't expect you to maintain yourself so well. Everyone picked up their cell phones and took pictures of me. Fervently, I screamed miserably, struggling with all my strength, but her friends firmly pressed me to the ground. Take your hands away to reveal her chest. I want to post the photos online so that netizens across the country can see this slut's body. Sienna almost lost her mind. The sound of her laughter echoed through the beauty salon. I fell into a pool of blood, almost dying. Until now, I finally confirmed that Troy had never shown Sienna my photo. Sienna? Does she seem to be dying? Shall we continue? Sienna's best friends were a little scared. Sienna sneered, saying, "You act so amazingly when you were being Troy's mistress. Did you ever think about your outcome? It's okay as long as I marry Troy and marry into a wealthy family. Troy and my mother-in-law will help me handle it, no matter what happens." After finishing her words, Sienna waved her hand and said, "Drag her into the car." Then she looked down at her wristwatch and her face changed. She hurriedly said, "Hurry up. Let's go to the engagement banquet venue. My mother-in-law should be there soon." Troy said, "He wants to formally introduce me to his mother today." After Sienna finished speaking, her group of girlfriends started pulling my hair and dragged me out of the beauty salon. Before leaving, she raised her voice and said to the boss of the beauty salon regarding all the losses caused by us here today, "Go to the finance department of the Malone Group to be reimbursed for it. Tell them that Troy's wife sent you there." At her words, the beauty salon boss's face changed. He quickly showed a pleasing smile and said, "So it's Mrs. Malone. Don't worry, we won't call the police about what happened here today." Sienna was proud and satisfied. I, who had almost lost all my strength, was humiliated, allowing them to drag me out of the beauty salon. Passers-by were pointing at me and whispering. Sienna stood with her hands on her hips and cursed. "I'm teaching the mistress a lesson. It's none of your business." Someone couldn't bear it anymore. A woman stepped forward to persuade her. "Miss, even if she is indeed the mistress, you can't beat her up like this. Her face is covered in blood, and you tore her dress. Get a piece of clothing to cover her up. Every part of her has been exposed. We all have our dignity. Moreover, what you are doing is illegal." Sienna wouldn't listen at all. She sneered at the woman who spoke up, saying sarcastically, "Well, you are so eager to come forward to defend this slut. The way I see it, you are just like her. You are a shameless mistress, right? And I am rich. My husband is the chairman of the Malone Group. Even if I kill someone, I can afford the compensation." The woman angrily glanced at Sienna. I didn't expect Sienna, who looked gentle and weak, to speak so viciously. Finally, Sienna and her close friends drove and dragged me to the lobby of the hotel where the engagement banquet was held. Today was the engagement banquet. Both families had invited many guests from each side. There were dozens of them. I was dragged in. The guests on Sienna's side and various relatives all looked at me in unison. "Is she the mistress you mentioned?" Sienna's parents stood up and looked at me with resentment on their faces, nodded, saying, "Yes, that's right. She is the woman in the photo my husband posted on his Facebook timeline last night." I couldn't have mistaken her hearing Sienna's confirmation. Her mother, Elena Newman, ran straight to me and started slapping my scalp furiously. "Bitch, how dare you steal my daughter's man? Today I'll kill you." The continuous blows left me too weak to even speak. I even wondered if they would beat me to death here today. Kill her. Only my daughter can marry into a wealthy family. Elena called her friends over. The people from her side surrounded me again. In the end, Elena said to Sienna, "Sienna, bring a knife over. I want to ruin her face. I'll see how you seduce other men in the future." Sienna handed a knife to Elena. Everyone was looking at me as I endured heart-wrenching pain. Elena fiercely slashed my face with the knife. Ouch! I screamed hoarsely. The overwhelming pain made me wake up from the daze. At this time Sienna's cell phone rang. She arrogantly turned on the speakerphone and Troy's voice rang out. "Sienna, has my mom arrived? What happened over your side? Why is it so noisy?" Sienna sneered, saying, "I'm teaching your mistress a lesson." Troy was stunned. "My mistress? What are you talking about?" Sienna, with a knife in her hand, said, "Your mistress from last night's photo." Troy's face filled with anger when he heard that that's my mom. "What did you do to my mom?" As Troy's words echoed through the speaker, the entire room fell silent. Sienna's face turned pale, her hand frozen midair, still gripping the knife she had just used to humiliate me. The sneer that had twisted her lips moments before faded into sheer terror as the reality of her actions crashed down on her. "My mom," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper, her gaze now fixed on me, the woman she had relentlessly tormented and humiliated. Elena, her mother, who had been cheering her on, froze in disbelief. "What do you mean?" she muttered. This can't be." But it was I woman they had beaten, stripped of my dignity and my very clothes. Was Troy's mother not a mistress? The crowd began to murmur in shock and disgust, eyes filled with pity and horror. Troy's voice on the phone grew colder. What did you do? Is my mother hurt? Am coming now. The line went dead, leaving a chilling silence in its wake. Sienna dropped the knife, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She stumbled back, her face twisted in fear as she realized what she had done. Her perfect life, the engagement, the marriage, all of it was slipping away. She had shattered everything with her blind rage. Elena grabbed Sienna by the arm, trying to shake some sense into her. Fix this, she hissed. Do something before it's too late. But it was too late. I could see it in their eyes. There was no going back. They had stripped me of my dignity and nearly my life, all based on a terrible misunderstanding. When Troy burst through the doors of the hotel lobby and saw me lying there, beaten and bloodied, his face twisted with pain, he rushed to my side, his voice shaking. Mom, I'm so sorry, he whispered, tears filling his eyes. This is my fault. I should have. Despite my pain, I reached out and touched his cheek, trying to comfort him. No, Troy, I whispered, my voice weak but steady. This isn't your fault. But she can't be part of our family. Not after this. Troy's face hardened with determination as he stood up. He turned to Sienna, his expression cold and unforgiving. It's over, he said flatly. You're not the woman I loved. You're nothing to me now. Sienna fell to her knees, sobbing hysterically. Troy, please. I thought she was a mistress. I was jealous. I didn't know. She cried, her voice desperate. But Troy's face was set like stone. You didn't care to know. You let your jealousy ruin everything. Get out of my sight. Elena tried to intervene, but Troy cut her off with a sharp glare. And you, he spat. You're just as guilty. I don't want either of you near me or my mother ever again. As Sienna and her mother were dragged out of the hotel, I looked around the room at the guests who had come to celebrate. Now they stood in stunned silence, unsure of what to do or say. Troy knelt beside me again, his tears falling freely. Now I'm going to take care of you, Mom. I promise. I smiled weakly at him, my heart aching from the pain, but also filled with love for the son who stood by me. That's all Eve ever needed, Troy. Just you. And as I lay there in the aftermath of betrayal and humiliation, I knew one thing: for nothing could break the bond between me and my son. Not Sienna, not anyone. As Troy held me close, I could feel his arms trembling. Though I was still weak from the beating, I knew the worst was yet to come. The physical wounds would heal with time, but the emotional scars, the betrayal, the humiliation would stay with me forever. Yet even as I lay there, bloodied and broken, I couldn't let this be the end. The next morning, I woke up in a hospital bed, the sterile sound of antiseptics filling the air. Troy sat beside me, his face etched with concern. He hadn't left my side, not even for a moment. When our eyes met, he gave me a weak smile, but I could see the guilt behind it. Mom, he began softly. I'm so sorry. I don't know how this happened. I squeezed his hand, my voice still hoarse from the attack. It's not your fault, Troy, but we need to make sure this doesn't happen again. I couldn't let Sienna and her mother walk away from this unscathed. Their cruelty had gone too far, and I needed justice. Not just for me, but for every person they had hurt along the way. Later that day, I contacted my lawyer. There would be legal action, charges of assault, defamation, and harassment. I wanted Sienna and her family to feel the full weight of their actions. The news of the engagement party incident had already spread online like wildfire, with pictures and videos circulating. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every woman who had ever been shamed and degraded. Weeks passed, and the court case gained momentum. The Malone name, once respected, was dragged through the mud. As Sienna's brutality came to light, her family, once so proud of their wealth and status, found themselves in the middle of a scandal that wouldn't go away in court. I faced Sienna for the first time since that horrific day. She looked smaller now, her arrogance stripped away. As the evidence piled up, the photos, the witness testimonies, Sienna's confidence crumbled. She tried to apologize, to claim she was overwhelmed by jealousy. But her words felt hollow. No apology could undo the damage she had done. The judge handed down the prison time for Sienna and a hefty fine for her family. As they led her away in handcuffs, I felt the sense of closure wash over me. Justice had been served. In the aftermath, Troy and I began to rebuild our lives. We moved to a new city, far away from the memories of that awful day. I started a foundation for victims of domestic abuse and public humiliation, using my story as a beacon of hope for others who had suffered in silence. Troy, too, found his way again, though the experience had changed him forever. He was more guarded now, careful with whom he allowed into our lives. And as for me, though the scars remained, I had found strength I never knew I had. My life wasn't defined by what Sienna had done to me, but by how I had risen from it. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor, and nothing could take that away from me. This wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with strength, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her son. I had a sneaky idea. I bought a pair of sunglasses and pretended to be a blind person. Then I went for an interview at a blind massage center. Since my skills were good, I managed to get the job successfully. I worked as a salesman during the day and pretended to be a blind masseur at night. At first, I thought that would be it. The money that I earned from being a blind masseur was enough to support my family. After working as a blind masseur for 2 weeks, my boss suddenly wanted to talk to me. Your customers all praise your good techniques. They say that you always make them feel very comfortable. I let out a sigh of relief. He then said, "Lucas, since you're doing great, I want to give you an opportunity. Do you want to earn more money?" I was momentarily stunned and immediately nodded. Of course. My boss nodded in satisfaction. I was a little excited. I saw he was staring at me. He suddenly reached out, and it seemed like he wanted to poke my eyes. I shivered and instinctively wanted to dodge. However, I stopped myself just in time. I was pretending to be blind. I should not be able to see anything. If I moved, it would give away the truth. His fingers stopped right before my eyes. As I remained motionless, he nodded and grabbed my hands. He said, "Lucas, we provide a hidden service on the top floor. You're in this industry, so you know that some people are more sensitive when they're being massaged. Some of them feel pleasure from it, right?" I nodded. I learned that when I was in vocational school. Besides, during the 2 weeks that I was here, I met customers who were a bit more sensitive than others. They could not bear the stimulation from the massage after a short while. Those who are on the top floor are our VIPs. You have to be careful not to provoke them. If they like your service, you'd be able to earn a lot of money. A little tip from them might be worth more than your salary. My eyes widened behind my sunglasses. It sounded too good to be true. I gulped and immediately said, "Don't worry. I'll do my best." "Good. You can head to the top floor tomorrow. I have high hopes for you." He patted my shoulder and left. I clenched my fist in excitement after he left. After work the next day, I rushed to the massage center. Someone led me to the top floor and into a room. I was shocked when I looked at the furnishings. The room looked very luxurious. An average person would not be able to afford something like this. "Lucas, get ready. The VIP is almost here." The supervisor came in to inform me. I nodded and stood by the door. I lowered my head as I waited, and after a while the door opened. I saw a pair of long legs wrapped in black pantyhose. She was wearing a pair of high heels too. I kept my head low as I said respectfully, "Good evening, miss. I'm Monsieur number 888. I look forward to serving you today. Are you new?" She asked as she stood before me. I nodded. "Yes, Mississippi look up," she said. I raised my head. Through the sunglasses, I met her eyes. I was completely dumbfounded. Camila Dunn. I could not believe it. Camila was the CEO of our company. Almost all male colleagues fantasized about her. I was no exception. I was a normal man after all, even though I was married. It stirred some feelings in me whenever I saw a beautiful woman like Camila, but I had not expected to see her here. "Take off your sunglasses. I don't like when people talk to me with sunglasses on," Camila said coldly. I trembled, but I still took off the sunglasses. My eyes were lifeless and unfocused as I stared in front of me. To get hired at this massage center, I had spent a lot of time learning how to pretend to be a blind person. Camila stared intently into my eyes. I did not even dare to blink. She finally looked away just when my eyes were getting sore. I let out a sigh of relief. It was fortunate that I was not very well known in our company as a CEO. She did not know about me. "You look handsome now. Let me see your skills." After she said that, she started to take off her clothes right in front of me. I gulped as she tossed her clothes away. Finally, she was wearing her birthday suit. She lay down on the massage bed. I kept reminding myself not to give anything away. Then I started massaging her. Camila's skin was very soft and smooth to the touch. I massaged as usual, but after a while, Camila seemed dissatisfied. "What are you doing? Didn't your boss teach you how to do this?" I was surprised. Before I could react, she took my hands and pressed them against her lower back. I swallowed hard as my trembling hands started to massage that area. Although I had somewhat guessed this was the type of hidden service on the top floor from what my boss had told me yesterday, I still felt nervous when I actually started doing it. As I continued massaging her, she began to relax. After a while, I could hardly keep myself composed as I looked at her serene expression. I gave my best, and she shivered a few times, clearly pleased with my skills. "You're really good at this," she said after I finished. Camila took a moment to compose herself, and then started smoking. I stood respectfully at her side. She blew a smoke ring in my direction, took out a wad of cash, and placed it on the massage bed. I didn't look at the money at all. I was cautious, suspecting she might be testing me. As expected, I noticed her watching me from the corner of her eye. When she saw I didn't react, she nodded, satisfied. "This is your tip. I'll request your services again next time." She placed the money in my hand. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. She was very cautious. I pretended to feel the thickness of the stack of cash, and then put on a surprised expression as I thanked her. "Thank you very much." Camila waved her hand, dismissing me. I took the money and slowly left the room. Once outside, I looked at the cash in my hand. It was about $5,000. I found it a bit unbelievable to have received such a large tip for just giving a special massage. I took a deep breath and put the cash in my pocket before heading back to the lounge. After a while, my boss called me in and praised me. He said the client was very pleased with my performance and kept encouraging me to keep up the good work. I, of course, readily agreed. My boss didn't schedule any other clients for me after my session with Camila. It seemed that few clients paid for the top floor service. It was more about quality than quantity. I went home after my shift, but the attractive image of Camila lingered in my mind. I didn't even bother to shower, releasing my pent-up tension with my wife. The next day, I went to my full-time job as usual. But when I reached the office building and was about to enter, I saw Camila arriving by car. I panicked and immediately turned around. Camila didn't notice me as she parked, and I sighed in relief. I needed to avoid her in the office. Otherwise, she might be surprised to find out she was being served by a simple salesman like me. I finished my shift feeling anxious and went straight to my other job. Upon arriving at the massage center, I calmed myself down and prepared for the evening. To my surprise, Camila showed up again right after I had changed into my uniform. She'd had a massage yesterday, so why was she back today? Was she really that interested? I cast a quick glance at her, but when she turned around, I unfocused my eyes and began the session. After yesterday's experience, I was already familiar with her body and knew her sensitive spots. I started with a light warm-up before using my main techniques. Camila sighed softly under my touch. However, toward the end of the massage, she suddenly turned around and pushed me against the massage bed. I was surprised. Though I had imagined scenarios with her before, I had never dared to act on them. But Camila seemed to have lost her composure. She brushed my hands away and tried to pull on my pants. I held onto my pants firmly and quickly said no. I don't offer that type of service. Her eyes briefly regained some clarity, but when she noticed my nervousness in a non-threatening way, her interest returned. "Don't you want to? I'll pay you $10,000 for it," she offered, her voice dripping with temptation. I hesitated but still shook my head. $20,000. My heart raced. $30,000. Camila showed no hesitation. I swallowed hard. $50,000, she whispered, leaning closer. She seemed almost offended by my refusal as she looked at me and, with a soft sigh, leaned in as if to kiss me. As Camila leaned in to kiss me, a shiver ran down my spine. It was a dangerous line, a point of no return. The thought of $50,000 kept echoing in my mind, tempting me, but something deep inside held me back. I took a subtle step backward, trying to refuse without causing a scene, but in that instant, I saw her expression change. Her face, which had been alluring and seductive, transformed completely. She became cold, calculating, and alarmingly observant. Camila kept her gaze on me, eyes narrowing as if she were piecing together a puzzle. I felt the tension in the room rise, and she raised an eyebrow, a cruel smile starting to spread across her lips. "Interesting," she murmured, crossing her arms and studying me like I was some kind of specimen. "Tell me, Lucas, why did you back away?" She paused, her gaze fixed on mine. "Or better yet, how did you know I was so close?" That was when panic set in. I could feel my face flush as my stomach dropped, realizing I had just betrayed my disguise. She was one step away from putting everything together, and I struggled to keep my expression neutral. I could feel cold sweat beading on my back. I desperately searched for an excuse, anything to explain my behavior, but before I could open my mouth, she laughed, a dry, knowing laugh that sent a chill through me. "You really thought you could fool me? Pretending to be blind to get a job?" She shook her head, each word laced with contempt. "That's pathetic." My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what was happening. How had she figured it out? Had someone reported me? Or had she known all along and was just waiting for this moment to confront me? I felt my mouth go dry as shame and fear paralyzed me. But before I could even attempt to defend myself, Camila turned and snapped her fingers, her authority cutting through the air like a blade. The door opened behind me, and two security guards stepped in, their expressions cold and emotionless as they fixed their gaze on me. I was trapped, and any hope of talking my way out was gone. She was in complete control, and anything I said or did would only make things worse. "I knew from the start that you were a fraud, Lucas," she said, looking at me with barely concealed disgust. "This job, this position, it was all a test. You were nothing but a little rat in my experiment." Those words hit me like a slap in the face. All my efforts to provide for my family and sustain my dual employment now felt like a bitter joke. I was starting to realize that every wrong decision I'd made had led me straight into this trap, and now I was entirely at her mercy. Camila took a step closer, relishing my expression of defeat, her gaze filled with disdain. She looked me over as if I were a broken toy, something she could discard at will. With a casual gesture, she signaled for the guards to take hold of me. One of them gripped my arm firmly, while the other positioned himself to block any escape. I was completely cornered. "You know, Lucas," Camila continued, her voice laced with scorn, "there's nothing more despicable than a liar who thinks he can get away with it. Did you really believe you could pretend to be blind and I, of all people, wouldn't notice?" I struggled to speak, shame and desperation choking my words. "Camila, please. I needed this job. My family relies on this money." She laughed, a cold, mocking sound that cut through any illusion of mercy. "Oh, so now you want me to feel sorry for you?" She gave me a look of pure contempt. "Sympathy is for honest people, Lucas, not for liars and opportunists. Do you think you're special? Well, let me show you what happens to people like you." She waved her hand dismissively, and the guards began to drag me out of the room. Panic overwhelmed me. I knew that if she wanted to, she could ruin every part of my life, professionally, personally, financially. Everything I had worked to build could be destroyed with a single word from her. I tried to pull my arm free, but the guard's grip was unyielding, while Camila watched, utterly satisfied with her power over me. As they led me down the corridor, my mind was spinning. She hadn't just discovered my lie. She was prepared to make me pay for it. And I was finally starting to see that every foolish decision I had made, from pretending to be blind to rejecting her kiss, had been carefully manipulated by her to bring me to this humiliating point. I felt like a puppet, with every move controlled by her, leading me toward my downfall. The guards threw me out of the building, shutting the door in my face, leaving me stunned, Camila's words still ringing in my ears. I felt a knot tightening in my throat, the weight of the situation settling over me like a ton of bricks. I was finished. I knew that even if I tried to find work elsewhere, Camila's influence would make sure no one would hire me. It was only a matter of time before word got around. I walked home slowly, each step heavier than the last. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, shame, and despair. I had failed not only as a professional, but as a husband and provider. How could I face my wife? How would she react when she learned not only that I had lost my job, but that our entire life was about to collapse because of my lies? Camila's proposal came as an unexpected shock a few days after the incident. She sent me a direct, cold, and clear message. $100,000 for one last massage, Lucas. After that, I never want to see your face again. My stomach churned as I read it. $100,000. That amount was impossible to ignore, but accepting it would mean submitting myself to one more round of her cruel games. Yet the temptation was unbearable. I could pay off all my debts, set aside savings, and maybe even try to rebuild my life. The dilemma gnawed at me, and that evening, beside my wife, I rehearsed a feeble excuse. I told her I had a last-minute work engagement and would be home late. She raised an eyebrow, seeming slightly suspicious, but then relaxed and smiled. "All right, love, I'm going out too. One of the girls invited me for a girls-only night. Enjoy your work." Her words unsettled me in a way I couldn't explain, but I did my best to hide the tension. She seemed unusually at ease, and I didn't yet know that it would be the last night I would share a truth with her. On the way to the massage center, my mind was racing. I knew that accepting Camila's game meant submitting myself to her whims one last time, but the money was irresistible. When I arrived, a receptionist greeted me and directed me straight to the top floor, where the client was already waiting. My heart was pounding, and the sense of discomfort was almost tangible. When I entered the room, the ambience was different. Dim lighting, soft music in the background, and a faint floral aroma created an intimate, elegant atmosphere. The client was already lying on the massage table, and I noticed she was blindfolded, which struck me as odd, but I considered it just another one of Camila's games. I swallowed hard and approached her. I began the massage, doing my best to stay composed and not reveal my discomfort. Her skin was soft to the touch, and every movement seemed meticulously planned to keep the session as professional as possible. She let out a gentle sigh, as though surrendering to the relaxation. It was evident she was enjoying it, and for a moment I tried to block out my thoughts, focusing only on finishing the job and getting out of there. But as the minutes passed, an unsettling feeling grew inside me. The woman moved as if she were completely comfortable, and her body responded to my touch in a way I hadn't expected. With each movement, each touch, she sighed more intensely, almost as if she were fully surrendering to the experience. Something about her behavior disturbed me profoundly, and I began to feel a knot forming in my stomach. There was something uncomfortably familiar in her reactions. Suddenly, it dawned on me. Each gesture, each reaction, each detail of her body reminded me of someone I knew intimately. I tried to push the thought away, but it became clearer and clearer. Her perfume, the subtle movements, it was as if my body recognized this person before my mind did. My hands suddenly froze, and a wave of panic washed over me. My heart raced, and the realization hit me like a fatal blow. I was massaging my own wife. A chill ran down my spine and my body went rigid. Everything made sense now. Camila, with her subtle cruelty, had planned every detail to place me in this humiliating, excruciating situation. This was her final revenge, the ultimate humiliation. It wasn't just payback for my attempt to deceive her by pretending to be blind. It was her way of showing me just how vulnerable and powerless I was under her control. She had invited my wife, gifted her this prize of an exclusive massage experience, knowing it would be me in the room without her knowing. My wife lay there, motionless, enjoying every second, while I fought to keep my composure. The irony of the situation hit me like a slap in the face. I knew she was enjoying it, that she was experiencing something that clearly pleased her, and it hurt in ways I could never explain. The idea that she was surrendering so naturally to the massage, unaware that it was me, stirred up a mix of anger and pain within me. Finally, I finished the massage. My heart was pounding, and every fiber of my being screamed to get out of that room as quickly as possible. As I pulled back, my wife let out a soft sigh, still relaxed, and I knew I would never be able to look at her the same way again. I left the room feeling like a complete fool, as though every wrong decision I had made had led me straight to rock bottom, all because of Camila's cunning manipulation. Leaving the building, I wandered the streets aimlessly, still in shock, trying to process everything. I had been used, betrayed, and humiliated, and my wife, unknowingly, was at the center of this twisted game. What hurt the most was realizing that, not knowing it was me, she had completely given herself over to the experience. It was a bitter truth that I couldn't shake. Later, at home, I sat on the couch, drowning in heavy silence. After a while, my wife came home, smiling, as if returning from a light, fun night out. She avoided making eye contact and casually offered an excuse about where she'd been, unaware that I knew everything. That was the last straw for me. I realized that the marriage I had fought so hard to maintain was already in ruins. That silent, unintentional betrayal was the final blow. I stood up, and before she could say anything, I asked for a divorce. Her face turned to one of surprise and confusion, and she tried to understand what was happening. But I had no explanations left to give. I didn't want to talk, didn't want to argue. I simply pulled away, gathered my things, and walked out of that house without looking back. The pain of the silent betrayal and Camila's cruel game still echoed in my mind. But what weighed on me the most was knowing I would never be able to forget what my wife had done, even though she hadn't known it was me.